Singing in the rain. What a glorious feeling. I remember sitting with my mother when I was a young kid watching old movies. I don't think I knew they were old movies at the time. We had a 9-inch black and white television with a coat hanger on top that served as our antenna. Everything looked like an old movie on that thing. My dad had the big screen television in his room. It was 12 inches. My mother and I watched so many films together, classics from the golden age of Hollywood, the films she grew up watching in theaters, the films that made an impression on her and on everyone in that generation. My mother enjoyed musicals, and it rubbed off on all of her children. Her love for Gene Kelly wasn't as easily transferred, but I sat and watched every one of his movies with her, and none was more memorable than Singing in the Rain. Everyone knows the scene of Gene Kelly singing and dancing, twirling the umbrella around his arm, twirling himself around the light pole. It's a classic clip, but for me, that wasn't the highlight of the film. For me, the performance that made that film was that of Good Morning by Kelly, Debbie Reynolds, and Donald O'Connor. It was magical. The way the three coordinated their moves, dancing down the stairs, jumping on the couch to flip it together, I thought it had to be the greatest dance performance ever in a film. That is, until I saw Stormy Weather. Until I saw the Nicholas brothers' performance in that film, shot nearly 20 years before, uncut in one take. With grace and power, the brothers jumped from table to table and danced on the platforms between the band members without disturbing a note, without missing a beat. And in one of the great dancing feats captured on film, they performed jump splits, each one over the other, down a flight of giant stairs, every split in time with the band. Fred Astaire said that the Nicholas brothers routine was the greatest dancing he'd ever seen. Every time I see it, I know he's right. It's breathtaking, it's awe-inspiring, and it's something you won't see in Singing in the Rain. It is well known that Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire frequented clubs in Harlem to get ideas for their own routines from the Black dancers who performed there. They even got to know many of the dancers. Gene Kelly and the Nicholas brothers were friends, in a way. Many of the ideas that Kelly and Astaire discovered in the New World of Harlem made it into their films, like Singing in the Rain. The dancers who created the ideas did not, nor did they get any credit. But while Black people didn't make it into Singing in the Rain, Blackface did. I don't mean in the homage they give to the jazz singer. It's never mentioned that in that film, the hero is a man who performs in blackface. No. When that movie is mentioned, it is only noted for the accomplishment of being the first talkie film. It's pretty amazing when you think about it, how so much of the ascension of American industry and culture has been scaled while stepping on the backs of Black folks. But I digress. The blackface in Singing in the Rain might be missed if you're not looking closely. During the scene when Kelly's character Don Lockwood and producer R.F. Simpson discuss the triumph of the jazz singer, in the background you can see a group of white men wearing blackface, kinky afro wigs, and fur garments, all certainly in preparation for playing those savages in Africa. You know, the ones who created the style of dance and music being exploited in both films. One day, my mother called me into the living room to sit with her. Singing in the Rain was on again. By this point, our television was a little bigger and had color. It was an old model for sure, but when you're poor, you're used to being behind. Still, it allowed us a better look at what we were watching. The movie no longer played the same for me, but I watched my mother smile and sing along to the songs. Admittedly, I sung along to Good Morning too. That scene is still impressive no matter how you look at it. It's mainly because of my mother that I'm a writer today. She was very creative. She used to write short stories and poetry and draw portraits of all of her kids. She was also a very smart woman, so I know that she saw the men in blackface in that scene. I know she knew what the jazz singer was. and I know she knew who the Nicholas brothers were. As I got older, I understood the title Singing in the Rain to have another meaning beyond Gene Kelly swinging that umbrella in love, oblivious to the sky pouring down on him. It was also about the characters in the film finding a way, through music, to make something good out of a bad situation. That's what I realized these movies were to my mother. Of course, our story wasn't that of a rich Hollywood star who may have lost some ground to a new innovation. Hers was the story of a Black mother raising four kids in the inner city, afraid every time one of them walked out the door. Hers was the story of a homemaker who had to figure out how to feed a family when the only thing more bare than the cupboards was the bank account. Hers was the story of a life limited by the same powers that kept the Nicholas brothers and so many other Black artists and creators from getting their just due. But my mother allowed herself to receive what these movies offered because, as much as she needed to sing in her rain. She needed to find her joy where she was able because there were times when the downpour was too heavy and all she could do was cry out through the storms. My mother passed away this past October, another kick in the gut from the loathsome year that was 2020. Jackie Cannad was not only my mother, she was my dear friend. The only solace I have is that if the faith she spent my whole life teaching me is true at all, the rain is over for her now, and only the singing continues.